Hi there! I hope you had a lovely start to 2025, and I must sincerely apologize for disappearing for much of the end of 2024. But today I'm back with some of my most anticipated reads for the new year, ranging from, well, a lot of fantasy, but also to some literary fiction and even some non-fiction. Welcome aboard the International Express to Book Central. Grab a seat, settle in, and let's while away the journey with some book chat. I'm your host Jules, and today I'm sharing my most anticipated reads. I've decided to split these reads into two categories. The first category is books that have technically already come out, but I just haven't gotten around to them yet. Some of that actually means classics, as you'll find out, and others mean that they got released towards the end of 2024 and I just quite didn't have the time to fit them in. And then the second part, really, is books that are actually coming out in 2025, and I'm so excited for those. I think it's going to be a good reading year. 2024 was a pretty good reading year, especially in comparison to 2023. In 23, I felt like everything I read was fine, but none of it really hit. And I read a couple of books in 2024 that really hit. So I might, even though it's a little late now, I might still do a favorites of 2024 episode. I'm thinking about it. Anyway, that's how we're going to split it. First things first, I'm going to dive into the books that have already come out, but that I plan to read this year. The first one is a book that I actually have as a physical copy. The second one is as well, but we'll get to that. And that is The Lotus Empire by Tasha Suri, which is the third and final installment of the Burning Kingdoms trilogy. It starts with The Jasmine Throne, which I read back when it came out in 2021. And then I've reread it this year because my sister gave me the second one, The Oleander Sword, as a birthday present. And then I loved that. And because my sister is amazing, she also bought me the last one, The Lotus Empire, as a Christmas present. And I have been saving it. So I'm planning to start the year with that. I would love to read you the blurb on the back, but I feel it might contain spoilers for the first two. So let me just tell you that the Lotus Empire continues the journey of Malini as well as Priya, who have been waging this kind of battle for both of their kingdoms, or their empires rather, throughout the first two books. So Priya is from Ahiranya, and she is something of a priestess at this point as well, for that faith, for the religion that goes on there. And Ahiranya is a part of the Parijatvipa Empire, or the Parijat Empire, of which Malini is one of the potential heirs, rulers, etc. And they kind of clashed in the first book, kind of came together through circumstance and were like, hey, I want this. I want to rule my empire. You want your kingdom to be free. I'm sure we can work something out. And then in the second book, it proved that it was a lot more difficult to work things out. Although, to give both Priya and Malini credit, they knew it was going to be rough working it out. But nonetheless, things got a bit surprising once other kingdoms got involved and maybe some magical, mythological ancient beings got involved. So I'm very worried about this last book. Because the end of The Oleander Sword hit me. And I think it's going to hurt. But I'm very excited for that. That is The Lotus Empire by Tasha Suri. I can already tell this is going to be a long episode, and I can only apologize in advance. The second book I want to read, which also already came out in 2024, the way that The Lotus Empire did, is I want to finally read Naomi Klein's Doppelganger, A Trip into the Mirror World. This is a non-fiction book. It won the Women's Prize in 2024. And for this one, I am just going to read you the blurb. Here we go, from Storygraph. What if you woke up one morning and found you'd acquired another self, a double who was almost you and yet not you at all? What if that double shared many of your preoccupations, but in a twisted, upside-down way, furthered the very causes you devoted your life to fighting against? Not long ago, the celebrated activist and public intellectual Naomi Klein had just such an experience. She was confronted with a doppelganger whose views she found abhorrent, but whose name and public persona were sufficiently similar to her own that many people got confused about who was who. Destabilized, she lost her bearings until she began to understand the experience as one manifestation of a strangeness many of us have come to know but struggle to define. AI-generated text is blurring the line between genuine and spurious communication. New Age wellness entrepreneurs turned anti-vaxxers are scrambling familiar political allegiances of left and right, and liberal democracies are teetering on the edge of absurdist authoritarianism, even as the oceans rise. Under such conditions, reality itself seems to have become unmoored. Is there a cure for our moment of collective vertigo? The blurb goes on, but this gives you the point. So in Doppelganger, Naomi Klein discusses her feelings about being compared online to Naomi Wolf and people thinking she is Naomi Wolf. And I have to admit, I made this mistake myself. I've seen this book in bookstores for a year now. And every time I saw it, I was like, I think I would be really interested in this. And I decided to finally just go for it when I saw it in a bookstore the other day. So I'm reading it. I'm excited about it. It's probably going to make me mad. Another book that came out in 2024, but that I will be reading in 2025 is Heavenly Tyrant, which is the second book in the Iron Widow duology series by Xiran Zhao. Again, I kind of want to read you the blurb, but it could contain spoilers for the first one. I'm just going to read you like the little, that bolded little sales pitch at the beginning of the blurb on Storygraph. Zetian must balance dangerous politics with a new quest for vengeance in the sequel to the #1 New York Times bestseller Iron Widow, a blend of Chinese history and mecha science fiction. I'm going to leave it there. Iron Widow, which I reread at the end of 2024 in preparation for Heavenly Tyrant, I love that book. It's a lot of fun. It's so full of a particular type of female rage, which I love. and Zetian is a delightful mix of the historical Empress Wu and yet also a very recognizable woman. And I loved the choices that she made, even though they weren't always choices I would have made, but I'm not in her position. She's the kind of character who will consciously pick something that is admittedly morally wrong, but still right, according to her. And I love a figure that will do that, and I love an author who will do that. I know that Xiran Zhao had a long publication process for this. I saw on her Instagram that there's currently some BS going on with the ranking of the book, and also for that, I'm looking to read this and support her by buying it. And yeah, I'm just very excited for it. I think I might have to leave some time between reading The Lotus Empire and Heavenly Tyrant, because I think both are probably going to break me a little bit in their own way. And you don't want to double up on too much misery. According to Storygraph, my average, or the genre or the mood I read most is sad and depressing and dark. So yeah, that is good fun. Speaking of potentially sad and dark, a book I sort of started at the end of 2024, but only really got into in the last, 4 or 5 days, is The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, and I'm listening to this as an audiobook narrated by the ever-lovely Rosamund Pike. I watched the Wheel of Time series on Prime, season 1 and 2, somewhere in 2024, I think October, November time, and I really liked it. It took me some time to get into, but I really liked it, and I love Rosamund Pike. She's been a girl crush ever since Pride and Prejudice. So when I saw that she was the one narrating the audiobook, I was absolutely down. The audiobook is 32 hours, so it's going to take me some time, actually more closer to 33. It's going to take me some time to get through, but I'm enjoying it very much so far. Here's the blurb from Storygraph for the book. The wheel of time turns and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth returns again. What was, what will be, and what is may yet fall under the shadow. When a vicious band of half-men, half-beasts invade the two towers seeking their master's enemy, Moiraine persuades Rand al'Thor and his friends to leave their home and enter a larger, unimaginable world filled with dangers waiting in the shadows and in the light. This book originally came out in 1990. It is, I think, quite heavily indebted to The Lord of the Rings, but in a delightful way. So I'm looking forward to reading this, or rather listening to it. I'm listening to it while I'm knitting, which makes me feel exactly as old as I am. So that is good fun. And I just love listening to Rosamund Pike narrating things. She has an excellent voice for it. Speaking of excellent, a classic I'm hoping to read in 2025 is The Tale of Genji, which is one of, I don't even know how to describe it. It's often called the world's first novel, and it's enormous. It's like 1,200 pages. It's a Japanese classic written by Murasaki Shikibu, and I just really want to read it. So I'm going to read you the blurb for that. Written in the 11th century, this exquisite portrait of courtly life in medieval Japan is widely celebrated as the world's first novel. Genji, the shining prince, is the son of an emperor. He's a passionate character whose tempestuous nature, family circumstances, love affairs, alliances, and shifting political fortunes form the core of this magnificent epic. So, it's medieval literature, which is my entire jam, but from a fully different culture. And I'm really hoping to get into more literature from what we in the West call the Middle Ages, so roughly 500 to 1500 this year. I just want to expand my knowledge about those areas a bit, and I haven't read a big proper classic in a while. Because it is 1,200 pages, I'll probably do the same thing I did with Les Miserables and War and Peace, which is I'm going to set myself like a weekly target. So something like every week I want to read 5 chapters. It doesn't matter how long or how short the chapters are, and that way it will probably take me like an entire year to read this book, but that is fair. So once I manage to get my copy, I will probably be sharing updates of this over the coming year. Okay, so those are the books that have already come out that I'm definitely intending on reading this year. And with that, we're going to hop into books that are coming out this year. A lot of these books I have advanced reading copies of through NetGalley. This is not an ad. I would just highly recommend that if you're into reading, that you look into NetGalley. If you have a Kindle, it's ideal. If you have a phone and don't mind reading on that, or a tablet, you can download the app and read through that as well. They also have audiobooks. Treat yourself. All you have to do is write a short review. And I tend to write longer reviews because, well, that's me. But it's a great way of reading books and getting to give feedback on them before they come out. Okay, this is already looking to be quite long. So let me get into the first book. This is not in chronological order. This is just how it showed up on my NetGalley. For the books where I have advanced reading copies, I'll say some of them I don't. Okay. The first one is Vanishing World by Sayaka Murata. I have an arc of this. It's coming out April 15th. I'm going to read you the blurb. Be aware that this book is about sex and about childbirth, and therefore just bear that in mind for the blurb that we go into, or skip like a minute. Okay. As a girl, Amane realizes with horror that her parents copulated in order to bring her into the world, rather than using artificial insemination, which became the norm in the mid-20th century. Amane strives to get away from what she considers an indoctrination in the strange system by her mother, but her infatuations with both anime characters and real people have a sexual force that is undeniable. As an adult in an appropriately sexless marriage, sex between married couples is now considered as taboo as incest, Amane and her husband Saku decided to go and live in a mysterious new town called Experiment City, or Paradise Eden, where all children are raised communally, and every person is considered a mother to all children. Men are beginning to become pregnant using artificial wombs that sit outside of their bodies like balloons, and children are nameless, called only Kodomo-chan. Is this the new world that will purify Amane of her strangeness once and for all? I'm so excited about this. It's published by Grove Atlantic, and yeah, I'm just really, really looking forward to reading this book. It's going to do, I think, all the things that I like, which is talking about gender and about how gender influences our bodies and how we perceive our bodies. This weird purity cult that we've reestablished in this 21st century of us, where sort of bodies are on the one hand hypersexualized, but also they need to be so pure and high functioning with this wellness culture aspect, right? You need to optimize your body, and I'm like, let your body be an animal. Read some Mary Oliver. Anyway, I also love the idea of pregnant men. I think that's really cool. So yeah, that is definitely something I will be reading, as I have an advanced reading copy of it. And yeah, I just think it's going to blow my mind. Quite potentially, it won't really live up to my expectations because those are quite high, but that is a problem for early April. For now, I'm just thrilled to read Vanishing Wild by Sayaka Murata, which comes out in April. The next one, of which I also have an advanced reading copy, is City of All Seasons, co-written by Oliver K. Langmead and Aliya Whiteley. So Aliya Whiteley has been a favorite sci-fi author generally of mine for years now. I read a novella by her, I think back in 2016 or 2015 even, called The Beauty. And ever since then, every time I see a book of hers pop up on NetGalley or just generally in my view, I'll either request it on NetGalley or buy it. And I read a book called Calypso by Oliver K. Langmead last year, which is like a novel, it's like a poetry novel basically, where every POV is written in a different like style and meter of poetry. And I thought that was really interesting. It was also sci-fi. I wasn't entirely fond of what he did with the ending. I felt like sort of religion, especially Christian religion, was kind of forced in a little more than I enjoyed, although it made some sort of sense in the context of the novel. But I enjoyed it. I liked how experimental he was with his form. Aliya Whiteley's latest book that I read was also very experimental with forms. So I just cannot wait to read City of All Seasons. Here is the blurb from NetGalley. Welcome to Jamie Pike's Fair Harbor, a city stuck in perpetual winter, its windows and doorways bricked shut to keep out the freezing cold, its residents striving to survive in the Arctic conditions. Welcome to Esther Pike's Fair Harbor, a city stuck in constant summer, its walls crumbling in the heat, its oppressive sunlight a relentless presence. Winter and summer alike have both fallen under the yoke of oppressive powers that have taken control after the cataclysm. But both fair harbors were once a single united city, and in certain places, at certain times, one side can catch a glimpse of the other. As Jamie and Esther find a way to communicate across the divide, they set out to solve the mystery of what split their city in two, and what, if anything, might repair their fractured worlds. So I'm going to have to admit that I didn't read the blurb before I requested it, because I knew that I wanted to read whatever Aliya Whiteley wrote, and that I was interested to see where Oliver K. Langmead goes next. So this is actually really interesting. Thank God. So what I'm assuming is that Oliver K. Langmead might write one POV and Aliya Whiteley the other. I think that would be very interesting, or maybe they're not. I'll find out once I start reading. This comes out at the end of April, 29th of April, published by Titan Books. And I'm really looking forward to it. I think April is going to be a really good reading month, y'all. Yeah, I think it's going to be good fun. Another book that I have an advanced reading copy of through NetGalley that I'm also looking forward to, which is also sci-fi. Can you tell that I have favorite genres? Is A Palace Near the Wind by Jiang. You're not going to believe this. This one also comes out in April. I'm going to have to take like a week off work in April just to like battle through. Anyway, A Palace Near the Wind, the blurb from NetGalley. Liu Lufeng is the eldest princess of the Feng royalty and, bound by duty and tradition, the next bride to the human king. With their bark faces, arms of braided branches, and hair of needle threads, the Feng people live within nature, nurtured by the land. But they exist under the constant threat of human expansion, and the negotiation of bride wealth is the only way to stop, or at least delay, the destruction of their home. But come her wedding day, Lu Feng plans to kill the king and finally put an end to the marriages. Trapped in the great human palace in the run-up to the union, Lu Feng begins to uncover the truth about her people's origins and realizes they will never be safe from the humans. So she must learn to let go of duty and tradition, choose her allies carefully, and risk the unknown in order to free her family and shape her own fate. A powerfully imaginative, compelling story of a young woman seeking to save her family and her home, as well as a devastating meditation on the destruction of the natural world for the sake of an industrial future. This sounds amazing. And I thought so, which is why I requested it. What I really like here is this sort of reversal of the, a woman marries a monster dark prince of shadows and she's going to kill him, but no. But instead we get a woman who is maybe also more of a creature than a full human. But I hope she goes through with killing the prince. I've been very excited about books which are willing to go there. And yeah, I think it's important for science fiction to address climate change and the destruction of the natural world. It's sometimes called sci-fi, climate fiction. And I think this is going to be really good and really cool. As I said, also comes out in April 8th, and is also published by Titan Books. Titan Books is really on one, so go them. Now we're moving slightly away from science fiction and fantasy to look at a book I'm very excited about. It's included in an episode called Most Anticipated Reads, so of course I'm excited about it, but this is Flashlight by Susan Choi. One night, Louisa and her father take a walk on the beach. He's carrying a flashlight. He cannot swim. Later, Louisa is found washed up by the tide, barely alive. Her father is gone. She is 10 years old. In chapters that shift from one member to the next, turning back again and again to that night by the sea, Susan Choi's flashlight chases the shockwaves of one family's catastrophe. Louisa is an only child of parents who have severed themselves from the past. Her father, Serg, an ethnic Korean-born and raised in Japan, lost touch with his family when they bought into the promises of post-war Pyongyang and relocated to the DPRK. Her American mother, Anne, is estranged from her family after a reckless adventure in her youth. And then there is Tobias, Anne's illegitimate son, whose reappearance in their lives will have astonishing consequences. What really happened to Louisa's father? Why did he take Louisa and her mother to Japan just before he disappeared? And how can we love or make sense of our lives when there's so much we can't see? I'm obsessed by this idea of revisiting a single night, a single event through the perspectives of different family members and trying to figure out what happened, who was impacted by this, how. But I'm also really interested in kind of exploring this multicultural family, but also this moving to North Korea, returning to Japan, all the kind of historical trauma and conflict which took place in that region. Yeah, I'm very excited to see how that goes. This one comes out 3rd of June, I believe, and it's published by Farah Straus and Giroux. I think that's how you pronounce it. I doubt it's Giroux, so it must be something like Giroux. Okay, so I think that is the end of books for which I have advanced reading copies. So we're now going to move into books that I will be buying, which is only good. That's how it should be. We should be supporting the authors that we want to read books by. So the first book on this part of the list is Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins, which is her latest, I guess you could call it latest Hunger Games book. This book is going to follow Haymitch, who we know and love from the original trilogy. It's going to be about his experience with the Hunger Games, which were the 50th, so they were also a quarter quell. And we already know, because we know what Haymitch is like during the Hunger Games trilogy, we know it's not a good experience. So this one's going to be rough. And it's meant to come out 18th of March. I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm going to pre-order this so that when it's out, I can get started straight away. Maybe I should also take some days off in March. My boss is going to be very happy. But I read a lot of dystopian fiction, and a lot of especially young adult, but also new adult fiction got started when Suzanne Collins released or published the first Hunger Games books. But not many managed to quite hit the level of intensity and purpose, I would say, that Suzanne Collins does. I think the films are good adaptations, but they don't necessarily bring across quite the same horror, how could they, as the books, because you don't have quite that same introspection, right? The Hunger Games trilogy, it really pays attention to this impact that media has, and this focus on entertainment and sport, and how we dehumanize people by only seeing them through a screen. And well, there's a depth to her books which I don't necessarily see or recognize to the same extent in other dystopia. And when she brought out The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, initially I was like, why are we going back to this? But I realized because Suzanne Collins had more to say. She doesn't publish a book just to make money off an IP. I believe she has a story to tell. And I'm really scared, but also intrigued to see what she does with our current world and how she will critique that, which I'm sure she will in that book. Yeah, I'm scared, but I'm excited. The next book that I'm looking forward to, that I'm going to put a pre-order in for, is Katabasis by R.F. Kuang. I still haven't read Yellowface, so maybe I should do that in the first part of the year, because Katabasis comes out 28th of August, so maybe I should read Yellowface. But I really like Babel. I did also enjoy The Poppy Wars. I read the first book of that. I haven't read the other two. So maybe I'll do that as well. But The Poppy Wars didn't quite grab me the way that Babel did. And with Katabasis, she is going back to what she did with Babel to a certain extent. So here we go with the blurb, this time from Goodreads. Katabasis, noun, ancient Greek. The story of a hero's descent to the underworld. Alice Law has only ever had one goal, to become one of the brightest minds in the field of magic. She has sacrificed everything to make that a reality, her pride, her health, her love life, and most definitely her sanity. All to work with Professor Jacob Grimes at Cambridge, the greatest magician in the world. That is until he dies in a magical accident that could possibly be her fault. Grimes is now in hell, and she's going in after him, because his recommendation could hold her very future in his now incorporeal hands, and even death is not going to stop the pursuit of her dreams. Nor will the fact that her rival, Peter Murdoch, has come to the very same conclusion. With nothing but the tales of Orpheus and Dante to guide them, enough chalk to draw the pentagrams necessary for their spells, and the burning desire to make all the academic trauma mean anything, they set off across hell to save a man they don't even like. But hell is not like the storybooks say. Magic isn't always the answer, and there's something in Alice and Peter's past that could forge them into the perfect allies or lead to their dooms. I mean... So I'm going to be submitting my PhD this year, hopefully, if all goes well, right? So I deeply understand this idea of like, all this academic trauma, as the blurb says, has to be worth something, right? Like if my supervisor were to disappear, I would also have to just go like hunt them down, because they're like, no, you're marking this. I've spent too long on this for it not to become a thing, right? So yeah, because of that, I love it. And because I enjoyed her world building in Babel very much, I fully trust her to nail the academic setting. And I also really like her characterizations, so I think this is going to be fun. I wonder if we're going to delve into some romantic territory, but if yes, I'll trust our Kuang to do that. And this is going to be very fun in August. My PhD deadline is September, so this is probably the book that's going to carry me towards submitting. Next is a book coming out on the 15th of July, and this is The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. Here's the blurb. Back then, when I was a young woman, there were still witches. That was how Nana Alba always began the stories she told her great-granddaughter Minerva, stories that have stayed with Minerva all her life. Perhaps that's why Minerva has become a graduate student focused on the history of horror literature and is researching the life of Beatrice Tremblay, an obscure author of macabre tales. In the course of assembling her thesis, Minerva uncovers information that reveals that Tremblay's most famous novel, The Vanishing, was inspired by a true... Okay, so... The reason I just went silent is because this blurb is a mess. It probably just misses a word and meant to say it was inspired by a true case. Decades earlier, during the Great Depression, Tremblay attended the same university where Minerva is now studying and became obsessed with her beautiful and otherworldly roommate, who then disappeared under mysterious circumstances. As Minerva descends ever deeper into Tremblay's manuscript, she begins to sense that the malign forces that stalk Tremblay and the missing girl might still walk the halls of the campus. These disturbing events also echo the stories Nana Alba told her about her girlhood in 1900s Mexico, where she had a terrifying encounter with a witch. Minerva suspects that the same shadow that darkened the lives of her great-grandmother and Beatrice Tremblay is now threatening her own in 1990s Massachusetts. An academic career can be a punishing pursuit, but it might turn out right deadly when witchcraft is involved. Wow, I guess I'm really focusing in on the you might not make it until your submission date kind of reads. I love everything Silvia Moreno-Garcia writes. While Mexican Gothic wasn't my absolute favorite, I really liked what she did. And I did really like The Daughter of Dr. Moreau as well as Silver Nitrate. I haven't read Certain Dark Things or The Seventh Veil of Salome yet, but I have read her short story The Lover recently. So I'm just excited to dive back into Silvia Moreno-Garcia's mind. And if she's going to do more academia, yeah, give it all to me. I clearly need it. Yeah, some of these blurbs are very long, eh? That is quite impressive. Okay, another book I'm really looking forward to is called Death Takes Me by Cristina Rivera Garza, translated, I believe, by Robin Mayers and Sarah Booker. This one's coming out this year as well. I mean, it was technically already published in 2007, but now its English translation is getting published. Here we go. A city is always a cemetery. When a professor named Cristina Rivera Garza stumbles upon the corpse of a man in a dark alley, she finds a stark warning scrawled on the brick wall beside the body, written in coral nail. Beware of me, my love. Beware of the silent woman in the desert. After reporting the crime to the police, the professor becomes the lead informant on the case, led by a detective with a newfound obsession with poetry and a long list of failures on her back. But what has the professor really seen? As more bodies of men are found across the city, the detective tries to decipher the meaning of the poems and if they are facing a darker stream of violence spreading throughout the city. Okay, so alongside reading a lot of fantasy, I'm currently obsessed with books about academia and death. But what I really like about Death Takes Me is this meta approach. The author, Cristina Rivera Garza, kind of plays a role in her own novel. She's a professor there as well, and she's finding corpses, and they're linked to poetry, and why are these men dying? And I'm just very excited to see where this goes. Latin American fiction is always, I don't know if this is the right way to phrase it, but whenever I read Latin American fiction, I feel like there's so much life there, and there's such an ability to craft narratives that represent life in all of its different ways, the good, the bad, the beautiful, the ugly. And I'm excited to see what Death Takes Me does with that. And I love a bit of meta fiction. I love a bit of a thriller that takes place at a university. I love a detective who clearly has had a rough couple of cases and now just really wants to solve this. So yeah. There is one more book, and then I promise I will stop and I will hopefully manage to edit this down to something that is not 45 minutes long. And the last book that I'm really looking forward to is Authority, which is an essay collection by Andrea Long Chu. Here is the blurb. Since her canonical 2017 essay, On Liking Women, the Pulitzer Prize-winning critic Andrea Long Chu has established herself as a public intellectual straight out of the 1960s. With devastating wit and polemical clarity, she defies the imperative to leave politics out of art, instead modeling how the left might brave the culture wars without throwing in with the cynics and doomsayers. Authority brings together Chu's critical work across a wide range of media, novels, television, theatre, video games, as well as an acclaimed tetralogy of literary essays first published in N+1. As a critic, Chu places the Phantom of the Opera within a centuries-old conflict between music and drama, questions the enduring habit of reading Octavia Butler's science fiction as a parable of slavery, teases out the ideology behind Hillary Clinton's fictional sex life. Oh, that must be about the Rodham book. Anyway, and charges fellow critics like Maggie Nelson and Sadie Smith with a complacent humanism. Criticism is in a crisis of authority, or rather, that's what critics have been saying ever since the Enlightenment. In a magisterial new essay, Chu offers a revised intellectual history of this supposed crisis, tracing the surprisingly political contours of criticism from its origins in 18th century aesthetics all the way to its present form in the age of social media. Rather than succumbing to an endless cycle of trumped-up emergencies, Authority makes a compelling case for how to do criticism in light of the genuine crises, from authoritarianism to genocide, that confront us today. I'm not entirely sure when this book is coming out, but I think it's towards the end of the year as well. But I'm really looking forward to this. I recently watched a video essay by Shanspeare, which I'll try and link below, about, video essays and the essay form and criticism. And I was reminded of that a little bit while reading the blurb. I think critics have such a valuable contribution to make, but I think they're also, they're walking such a fine line between becoming gatekeepers or absolute snobs, or just talking so far away from the real experience of many people. And yet they have the ability to also really narrow in straight to the heart of something, because that's literally their job. So I'm very excited to see what Andrea Long Chu does. I'm excited to read what she thinks about The Phantom of the Opera. And I think this could be a nice collection to kind of read an essay here or there, kind of like with Gia Tolentino's essay collection, which I read ages ago and which I'm actually wanting to reread. Trick Mirror, Reflections on Self-Delusion. That was also an essay collection I really enjoyed, kind of reading an essay, letting it sink in, seeing how it affected my way of dealing with media, myself, etc. So yeah, I think Authority might do the same thing. And that's the books that I'm really looking forward to in 2025. I'll undoubtedly read other ones as well. I know I've requested more books on NetGalley, which I'm also looking forward to, but, well, I can't keep going forever. So you'll be hearing about these, hopefully, at some point in the year. And yeah, I think that it's going to be a good reading year. Yeah. I'm very excited about this, and I cannot believe how many books I've requested and picked and pre-ordered that are all about dying in the pursuit of academic excellence. I'm going to have to tell my boss about this. I think she'll think it's funny. But yeah, we'll see if I make it to the end of the year academically and literarily. I would love to know what you're looking forward to reading. And that's it for today. If you have questions, thoughts on the book, or recommendations or requests for future episodes, feel free to leave a comment or send me an email at bookcentralpod@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. You can also subscribe to be informed when new episodes drop. You can find references to the materials used today in the description. Book Central is written and produced by me, and our music is by Scott Buckley. Thank you for joining me today on the International Express to Book Central.